Painting monsters and beasts can seem quite daunting at first, difficult even, but when you scale it down to its composite parts, it's actually pretty straightforward. Every monster I've ever painted, I've really thoroughly enjoyed the journey, and you don't have to be an expedition level painter to get great results. So in this video, I'm going to be painting a rather delightful dinosaur beastie that Draco Studios have sent us. It's also known as a War Mother on Maw Tyrant. I'm going to be picking out a variety of different organic textures, some that are going to be used with minimal effort for maximum effect, and others, if you want to flex, some extra details too. Though we're going to be painting up a dinosaur in this video, you can use the methods and techniques in this video to apply to anything in your own collections, whether that's your own Seraphon, your own demon beasts, all the way to the Tyranids in your new Leviathan box set. It's massively translatable. So starting from a white undercoat, what I'm going to do is get some MORTARION grime and apply that all over. Now what I'm going to do here is thin it down 50-50. So I'm just going to pour a decent amount inside this spray lid and then get the same amount of water. I've got loads there because it's a big beast, and I can just apply that over, and I might want to do a second time as well once it's dry for those deeper recesses. Then it's a light dry brush of ivory. Again, just working your way around, picking out all those textures. Doesn't matter if you get on other areas that you're not going to paint as an actual part of the dinosaur body. It's just there to get those highlights picked out. Next up is to use Mantis Warriors Green, and I'm going to be thinning this down with water 50-50. Now, when you start applying this, you want this on the top part of the actual body, saving that white, creamy undercoat for its underbelly. Don't worry if it looks like there's a hard line between the underbelly and the actual green, because we'll sort that out later with a dry brush. Then I'm going to add some ivory again to add some texture to the skin, and again just work a little bit harder where the Mantis Warrior Green meets the underbelly, and that will help just blend it in. Now next up we're going to get some ivory, and we're going to use this to add some texture to the skin. We've got two options here. The first one, which is pretty easy and straightforward, is to get some sponge, get some of that ivory on it, and then dab it off. And then all we're going to do is just then dapple that onto the skin effect. Just be slightly cautious when doing this, don't be too heavy-handed. And then what that's going to do is give it a bit of a dappled leathery skin effect. And it might seem quite bright at this point, but don't worry, we'll sort that out later with a bit of a glaze. The other option, and this is one that takes a bit more time but looks far more effective, is to get some ivory again and then just start adding little strokes, almost to give it like a rough leathery skin effect as well. So you're just working in like a direction, just doing little strokes. Sometimes it's better to start off first just doing a couple of ghost strokes is what I call, and then just move your brush further into the model and then just do a couple of little flicks here and there. You can just do some dots as well, and that just gives it a bit of a texture. Then we're going to get some grass green. We're going to add this to the upper parts of the body where you'd want a brighter skin tone. It can be thinned down as well, so don't worry about that if it is a bit thin. If you don't need to do multiple coats, because some of that other colour that's come underneath, like the shade, etc., is actually going to add to this. Then we're going to sponge on some black green. We're going to do this on the uppermost parts of the actual body. So this is going to be onto the fins and the spikes around the face. And again, it will just give it a bit of a roughness to it as well. Nice bit of blotchy patterning here and there. And if you do find that it looks a bit too much in some places, just get some of that grass green and tidy back up. And also in some places you might want to stipple it on with a brush instead of using a sponge, because it'd be quite hard to reach. Next up is to get some thinned Mantis Warriors Green, pretty much the same mix we used before. I'm going to glaze over the skin. This is going to do two things. Firstly, the texture we use where we add ivory, where it's too bright, it's going to knock that back slightly, so it's going to make it not so white and pale. And also those black green sections where we've stippled it on, that's just going to add a bit more warmth to those as well, so it's not too stark and dark. Now to add some extra highlights to those black green sections, I'm going to get some grass green and dry brush that on. So just take your time and just build up those areas on the edges. Alternatively, you could stipple it on as well and do some dabbled strokes on the edges with a brush just to give it some extra texture. Again, it's entirely up to you which of these methods you use. All of them work. You could mix them all together if you wanted to. Do you like fantasy? Monsters and magical creatures? Then Draco Studios is the company for you. Draco Studios create high quality models that can be used for any game system, whether that be GW alternatives for the non-purist, or to throw into any D&D game to add even more flair to your adventures. There are well over 250 high-quality fantasy STLs for the Battle of Valerna Kickstarter, which runs until the 22nd of June. Oh, and they have some amazing dragons too. You can also purchase these miniatures from My Mini Factory, and there are plenty of print shop options if you don't own a 3D printer. Draco Studio has a well-developed Dragon Bond universe with several games out already and lots in the pipeline, with industry-renowned rules developers such as the mighty Alessio Cavatore and Jack Caesar. So go check out the Kickstarter to see for yourself, and check out the link in the description. Right, back onto painting some more dinosaurs. Dinosaur. Dino? Dino. For the light underbelly, what we're going to do is just relayer almost, if not highlight, with ivory. So the intention here is where it might be a bit blotchy from that wash, it's just going to relayer that up, and also where we've got the Mantis Warrior green joining the edge of the belly, it's going to help blend that in as well, to help remove quite a solid line from the Mantis Warrior green. Now for the highlights, I'm going to be using white. Now I'm going to be applying a couple of strokes here using a nice fine brush just to add some texture. You could do some dots as well, or for an easier version, you just get some sponge, get some of that white on it, dab it off, and then just sponge it on, giving you some texture with minimal effort. Now we're going to add some patterning to our Maw Tyrant or dinosaur beastie, and there's multiple ways of doing that. You can use any sort of reference from the internet or whatever to get some cool patterns. I'm just going to do a nice sort of dappled effect going down its spine, on its head as well, and I'm using deep orange for this. Now less is more to start off with. You can always add more to the patterning if you need to. Start with one coat, then add a second coat if you need to as well. One side I'm going to use an old brush that can still maintain a decent point, but if you want a quick method, we're going to do the sponge effect again, and you can just get some sponge, dab it off, and then just start attacking the side of it. In some places you might want to get that stipple brush that you used previously to stipple it on as well. Be mindful that you have to give it a good wash, otherwise you might end up mixing some of that green in there as well. Once the deep orange is done, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to apply some more splodges, but using light orange. We're going to add it to the same pattern, but we're going to be mindful to make it a little bit smaller so you can still see some of that deeper orange on the outskirts of it. And again, just work a bit smaller, and you might need to do a second coat. Now, as our final stage for the pattern, we're going to be using Sunny Skin Tone. And what we're aiming to do here is pick out some of those raised areas where there's actual highlights. So usually it's going to be around the face, where there's creases in the legs, if you've got the pattern on the legs, bits around the spines and stuff like that. It's more just to emphasize the edges of the actual skin as opposed to be part of a pattern. So, you know, picking out like rough bits on its face, around its eyelids, etc. For our eyes, we're going to keep them pretty simple for this video. We're going to start off with a base coat of deep orange. Again, just be mindful, try and get a nice point to your brush and just dab that in. Then finish off with a little dot of ivory. Now we're going to move on to what could be a bugbear for a lot of people, which is bone, claws and teeth. So like horns and stuff like that. So we're going to start first by using grimy grey, and we're just going to base coat any teeth and horns, and you can also do the claws as well. And we're also going to pick out the tongue in preparation for later on when we paint the tongue. Now the first step here, after the base coat, is to get some Seraphim Sepia. We're going to apply that all over the horns and teeth. Once that's dry, I'm going to get some Targor Raid Shade. Now I'm going to work about halfway up, so you still want some of that Seraphim Sepia showing at the tips. So your Targor Raid Shade is halfway getting to the base of the horn or base of the teeth. And then what we're going to do now is get some Agrax Earth Shade and apply that in the deeper recesses. What this is going to do is give you a nice transition from a nice sepia tone on the tips, get into a more of a reddy, ruddy kind of tone, which is the Targor Raid Shade, straight down to Agrax Earth Shade in those deeper recesses. Then we're going to move on to our first highlight, which is Grimy Grey, just picking out some streaks. Again, you can follow the contours of the actual claws and bone. If you're not sure, just pick out what feels comfortable. And on the extremities, just pick out a bit of white. Mostly going to be like the tips of teeth and stuff like that. And then just to knock back those highlights, just so they tie in nicely and look a bit more yellowed, we're going to get some Seraphim Sepia and just apply that over. Now for the tongue, we're also going to apply this to the gums as well, and obviously like the roof of the mouth. We're going to be using Magos Purple on all those areas we base coated Grimy Grey. With that dry, we're going to tidy up in some places and also highlight in others with Grimy Grey. So you can do some like nice texture on the tongue. They've got some horrible warts on it as well, so you can pick those out too. And with those highlights picked out, we're just going to reapply some Magos purple over those. You can apply it a little bit more thin down, and what that will do is just give it a bit of a glaze as opposed to just coat it all over and make it too neat and too dark. So all in all, I've really enjoyed painting this model that Draco Studios have sent us. There's lots to love about it. I enjoy painting creatures and monsters. My favourite things is doing the face and all the patterning on it, and that tongue, the texture on that tongue was really fun to do. So hopefully you've learned a lot from this, and if you want to learn how to paint other monsters, check out our Angron video, which is just going to appear as well. There's lots of things to learn from that video that will help you too. As always, thank you to Draco Studios for supporting us on this video, and thanks to our patrons for being amazing as always. See you in the next one.